if we don't stop the spread of this virus. There's the Asian carp, which are coming up from the Mississippi River. This is an invasive species that is most likely not going to enter the Great Lakes by ballast water, but would find a direct channel. Most likely the artificial connection between Lake Michigan and the Mississippi, the Chicago diversion.
Right.
And we need to put up literally a barrier, an electric barrier, because these Asian carp can jump out of the water, and I've seen them go 2-3 feet out of the water. It's quite frightening. They're pretty large.
And for our viewers who haven't seen the Asian carp, actually there is a website, and we will have it on the screen so that you can go to it and see the Asian carp. It's huge. I was shocked the first time I saw it. It literally knocks grown men out of fishing boats.
Yeah, they like the wake of the boat, I think.
They are attracted apparently to the wake of the boat, and then they get all excited and they literally jump around, and they end up in the boats sometimes, and they've knocked grown folks out of boats. In fact, there are a couple of gentlemen who are DNR employees, I believe, along the Mississippi, who are on workman's comp because of injuries by the Asian carp jumping into the boats.
Yeah, you know, this would be funny if it weren't true.
Exactly.
And if it weren't knocking on the doorsteps of
Right.
the Great Lakes, ready to wreak havoc on our fisheries and our ecosystem here. And what's been very frustrating is that this is a problem that's easily solved. We could stop this problem. The federal government has essentially just not done so for years and years. And so it's taken the efforts of states, and really your legislation was first and foremost, you were a leader on this issue. The states have had to step up and take this issue on because the federal government hasn't done anything about it.
Yeah, it really is sad. It frustrated me so much to see the lack of movement on the part of the federal government, because obviously a federal initiative, a federal solution to the problem would be best. So that's why, as you know, what is it, almost 5 years ago now, we announced the legislation, and you actually helped us write it, and we did enact it. Michigan became the first state in the nation, and obviously the first state in the basin to enact our own ballast water law. And in conjunction with the DEQ, the Attorney General's office, they all came on board immediately and said, we'll do whatever we can to help. The Attorney General will enforce it. The DEQ helped write the rules, along with the similar organizations from the other states, whether it was DNR or DEQ in the other states, to help write the rules on how to enforce the new law to deal with ballast water. So let's talk a little bit about that. Tell me.
Well, I view it in some ways as a tremendous success story on the part of state government. I think it was about 4 or 5 years ago when you were looking at the issue, and it was very clear that there were solutions to it. We knew what needed to be done. The federal government wasn't doing anything about it. And you said, well, I'm just going to sit down and pull everybody together, and we're going to write up a law to stop this thing.
Right.
And that law took effect in January of 2007, I believe it was.
Right.
And
we gave them 2 years.
Right.
2 years, and after the law was written, it became effective. So the shippers had time to deal with the issue.
Yeah, and the law would essentially require ships to use some type of technology to ensure that the ballast water that they're discharging has been treated so that any critters or invasive species or diseases in the water won't enter the Great Lakes. It's really fairly straightforward. If anything, it should shock people that ships would discharge thousands of gallons of ballast water from other parts of the world containing all kinds of biological pollution, which is what invasive species are, without any permit or any technological oversight. So your law sought to fix that problem. It took effect January 2007. No sooner did it take effect than the shippers went to federal court and challenged the law, essentially saying that the state of Michigan doesn't have the authority, the constitutional authority or the statutory authority, to protect the Great Lakes from ballast water discharges. I was very honored to represent you and some other state lawmakers in that legislation, state lawmakers from outside of Michigan. a bipartisan group of both Democrats and Republicans.
Representing Great Lakes states. We were all legislators from the Great Lakes states.
Yeah, this was an effort organized by the Great Lakes Legislative Caucus, which you were chair of. And these legislators realized that they had not just a common goal, but a common obligation on behalf of their constituents to do what they needed to do as state lawmakers to protect the Great Lakes from invasive species. And it was very important that the court recognizes that states can step in and solve a problem if the federal government's not doing so. The case went to federal court. Judge John Fikens, one of the most respected judges in Michigan, heard the case last summer and ruled entirely in the state of Michigan's favor on all counts. That ruling is now being appealed by the shippers to the Federal Court of Appeals, but I'd expect the same outcome. I think it's both good law and good policy to allow a state like Michigan to protect its waters from invasive species if the federal government's not going to do anything about the problem.
And the federal government really stepped aside, literally, and did not want to do anything. So we as states led the way, obviously beginning with Michigan. One of the important points in that is sometimes, and actually more frequently in these days or these times than it used to be in the past, the states are leading the way and showing the federal government that things can be done and helping them to work in their own state, and then the federal government tends to look favorably on them and enacts them on a federal level.
Yeah, well, the old saying is true that states are laboratories of democracy. Yeah. And I'm not going to bash the federal government. It's just that
no, I'm not either.
States often are where new ideas come out. There are far more state legislators in aggregate than there are members of Congress, and they're a lot closer to their constituents and to the problems that they're seeing on the ground. And so I think in many ways, state lawmakers like yourself were much more aware of this problem and much more eager to address it maybe than members of Congress. And so, as well as the federal EPA, which for years has declined to do anything about this problem. Yeah. So I think that we might eventually see a federal solution. It's just that the federal government's going to have to see states take the problem on and then decide, okay, states have figured out a way to address this. Now we could put in place a federal law.
And you know, part of the reason that I felt so compelled to try and do something about it was in talking to people all over the state of Michigan, not just in my home area, but all over the state, who like to fish. And they were going fishing, and instead of catching the nice medium and big-sized catches that they had over the years, they were finding only very small fish, and very few of those smaller fish. Gobies, where they used to catch trout and even salmon, and you know, goby is not considered the best fish to be catching.
You didn't have a good day fishing if all you caught was a goby.
And also it was a problem for our economy, not only with the, for instance, the invasives, the zebra mussels causing the problem with our intake pipes for our power plants and our municipal water supply plants, but also fishing is a huge part of Michigan's economic backbone. A lot of people have come here for years and years and years to fish, and we have a lot of charter boat fisher businesses, and suddenly some of them have closed up, and you know, they're not doing it anymore because they couldn't get any good catches when people would hire them as charters, so they just quit doing it and went out of business, and that's very sad. But it's also very sad that people can't take their sons and daughters out fishing and be able to catch a fish that, you know, you feel comfortable bringing home and eating, that's not junk fish, as some of my fisher friends call them.
Yeah, well,
that's kind of like, you know, that's part of Michigan's very heritage. It's like motherhood and apple pie. We ought to be able to go fishing at the nearby creek or river or lake and catch some decent fish to at least have a fish fry that night. And when people can't do that anymore, or they get fish that are either undersized or in some cases have the appearance that they have a disease, that's not a good thing for our economy.